Luis!
Hey, I actually finally watched that commercial after you showed it for 16 times, and it's the first time I
What
watched it.
what commercial?
The one intro.
Oh,
I've never seen it
okay.
or heard it. I walked
Or
away.
heard it. How's everything going on with you, Luis?
I'm tired.
You're
Just tired,
tired?
Lewis.
You're just a tired Luis?
Yeah, it
You
was.
look like an excited Luis though.
Yeah, no. I made sure to 16 Red Bulls directly injected into my bloodstream.
you just
Uh,
you just kind of injected it just like right now.
yeah, no, I felt like I waited 3 hours for you to finish that one sentence.
So welcome to a new season of We Got Issues. We are continuing our investigation of the rise of indie comics that's been happening for the past few years right now. We're very excited because man, I'm babbling a little bit. So we're just gonna get everything started in here. So we have Mr. Todd McFarlane in here on our show today as we've promoted for the past 3-4 days. He's here. They're going to be talking about Gunslinger Spawn, and we're going to try our best not to geek out as much as possible and get some questions in, because it's going to be crazy. So we're just going to try to get him in right now. Let me see if I can get him in. And it's happening, Luis. Mr. Todd McFarlane, how are you today, sir?
Hey, Tim Lewis, how are you doing today, guys?
Good.
Thank you very much for being here. Like I said before, we're gonna try not to geek out a little bit in there. Just on a side note too, as well, for you guys watching right now, Lewis had to change his shirt because we were matching white, and it's just kind of look embarrassing to Todd McFarlane that we're wearing like matching shirts and whatnot. So
Also, I'm a small human. Being with a white shirt with a white screen does not help. Does not help at all.
One of the things that I want to ask, sir, is how have you been coping with the whole pandemic thing? And is that
good? I'm alive.
Is doing
right.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, I'm in the same bucket as 8 billion other people. So we've all had our sort of normal lives disrupted, and you have, I guess, a couple options. You either just adjust and make do with what is in front of you as best you can until further circumstances,
right?
Or you complain. I'm sort of the former. I just sort of take what the reality is. Like I said long ago, learned that the name was Todd, only rhyme with God. I only control so much, and I just deal with it, right? So
exactly.
And complaining is not going to get me anywhere, anyways. So I understand that there's been hardships for everybody.
Right.
Not to belittle it. I mean, I've been through some myself. My mom passed away during COVID. She's up in Canada.
Sorry to hear that, sir.
This happens to lots of people. And she was up in Canada, and they weren't letting travelers come. And so I couldn't get there. The doctor said, "Hey, Todd, get up to Canada." They weren't letting travelers. And by the time I got the paperwork, she had passed away. So, okay, didn't get to say goodbye to my mom. Again, I'm not saying it's for that because I want anybody to feel sorry. I'm just saying that that's one of millions and millions of stories, and it's the reality of the world, right? So you can get angry about it, or you can just go, I assume everybody was doing the best they could, and hopefully we'll all get past this.
I'm in the same boat as you are. My father passed away on the 29th of May of COVID too, as well. And I'm in the same boat. I couldn't get back to Canada. I'm Canadian myself. I couldn't get back in Canada until I believe July 7th, when they lifted the restriction for Canadians.
Yep.
And that's when I went there. So yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. Did you respond to the call of action of Justin Trudeau when COVID first hit? He goes, "For every Canadian, come home. We'll take care of you," kind of thing. Did you like, oh, we'll get back up, let's go, kind of thing?
No, because recently I got my U.S. citizenship.
Okay.
My wife and I both born in Canada. She got her citizenship a long time ago. But without it, you're not able to vote down here. and I've been down
Right.
here a long time, and so I go, you know what, I should probably be a good citizen and participate in the
The
rights that
call
we
of it.
have down here. So, but you know, again, here's the other thing. So that's arguably some of the downsides of the world. The upsides of it is that because so many of us geeks were
Right.
locked away, which is almost everybody's a geek.
Right.
That you know, things like comic books and toys and things you could buy on the internet became a bit of a safe haven, and
Right.
those industries during, you know, what's going on and currently that's still going on, have been on an uptick and in some cases thriving quite well, right? Compared
Right.
to, I mean, early on places like hotels and airlines and other restaurants that, you know, got hit really hard. We were able to pick up sort of the slack of it. You couldn't go to remember you couldn't go to theaters, so you're not going to see your movie. You couldn't go to comic conventions, so a lot of those things that we would do is, you know, again, just part of every year of being in comic books and geekdom. Those were taken away from us,
Right.
and so we just reallocated some of that money in different directions. And one of the places was online and collectibles, right? I mean, if you talk about
Right.
to the sports people that do trading cards, they're going to tell you the same thing, right? People got home and they went, okay, I'll just start a baseball or football collection. Cool, right? So, fandom thrived for the most part, and has been
Right.
doing so. We're gonna,
It really opened up a lot of interest from those who were curious but now have time to actually explore into it.
I wouldn't say that. I would say it's simply a reallocation of money.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so, because I've got lots of 20 somethings working for me, and I've been quizzing them, and I go, hey, you can't get on an airplane, you can't go to, you know, you're not going to hotels, you're not buying con tickets, you're not going to restaurants, you're not going to bars, you're not going to movie theaters. All of that was just natural money that was going in and out of your pockets as a matter of course, just what we call standard of living. Uh, and now all that was taken away. So all that money that you were normally spending, you're not spending. So the question I was asking them was, are you seeing more money in your bank account? And they all shook their head real fast. Went, yeah, I've got basically forced savings. So what they were saying to me is that, hey, I usually used to buy stuff on the internet, but where I used to buy $40 worth of stuff, I'm now buying 60, right? Where I talked myself out of that $70 item and only bought the $25 item, I now have the extra $50 so I can upgrade to the $75 item. And they shifted that money that would have normally gone into a plane ticket to the San Diego Comic-Con. They shifted it into buying some geeky stuff. So so once we sort of get back to I don't think we're ever going back to a norm, but you know, a new norm. Then that money is going to get reallocated again, and the question is, all of those businesses, comic books and toys being two of them that I'm involved in, that went up, will they then come down? The answer should be yes. And then to what extent? Will they go back to where they were pre-pandemic? I don't think so, because I think people have discovered their collection, their comic, and now they're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm going to keep doing this. So yeah.
Right. How is that business for McFarlane Toys during the pandemic? I mean, that I would assume that because of a lot of online shopping that started happening, there's a lot more traffic on your website. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Well, it's the simple answer is 2020 was our best year ever, and
Wow.
2021 is going to be even bigger. So, what does all that mean, right? It just means that people are buying, and as part of that, then the big increases are coming where we sold to places like Walmart and Target, but their Walmart.com and their Target.coms, those are the places
Right.
where we're getting phenomenal growth because people,
Right.
you know, still during all of this,
Right.
either being comfortable or not, of going into stores. And even if you are comfortable, you can also just get stuff delivered to your door, right? We live in
Right.
a world that arguably is the beginning of the movie Wall-E,
Right.
where everything is automated and we don't have to even get out of bed, and
Right.
everything comes to our house. So
Everything is
Just
by and
sit,
large.
just sit there and whatnot.
All you
Um,
need.
it's true.
Which at least actually leads me to my next question there too as well. I mean, because of the pandemic and because of like the online shopping, and a lot of people tend to be on their computer a lot more often now too as well.
Yep.
Was 2021 always been the plan to release Spawn Universe, or was it just one of those things that you kind of saw as a business person, like, hey, you know what, everyone's going to be online a lot, they're gonna want to read about this and do this and all that. Let's just launch Spawn Universe now than later. Or has that been like a plan, or was it a premonition kind of thing? Or
No, I wasn't. So the simple answer is no. The initial big impetus came from when issues 300 and 301 of Spawn came out.
Mhm.
And I knew that when those books came out, and I think that came out in 2019, that we were
Yeah.
going to get a lot of attention on it. One, because issue 300 was going to be an anniversary book, and 301 was going to be, the record-setting, creator-owned book, that, for the longest running book passing service.
Right.
And so I knew there was going to be eyeballs on it. And I've been thinking literally since day one that we began Image Comics way back in 1992.
Mhm.
We had always sort of talked amongst the partners about doing a shared universe. Never really happened. But every now and then in the back of my head, I thought about it. And when 300 came, I went, Todd, you've been procrastinating for 26 years, whatever, right? Like it's either you're going to do it or you're
Right.
not. And I decided at that point, now that I've got a bunch of eyeballs looking in my direction, that
Mhm.
this might be the time. If you look at the cover of one of the covers of issue 300 and 301 that Jerome Pena did,
Yes.
that I inked, both of those were group shots. And for the most part, the majority of those characters were not in either one of those issues. And so that was my tease, if you will, because people ask me like, why did you do that cover with all those characters and not in that? And I just go,
Right.
well, just wait. And so it was at that point that I started putting formal plans into place to get going. And that a year later the pandemic came upon us. Sort of, if anything, it actually set the plans back a little bit because we, as you guys remember, in the middle of 2020, the industry shut down,
Right.
right, for a few months, and I was of the ilk of once we came back, that not only should we come back and do what we normally do, but we should take advantage. Although I had the plans there, but we should be taking advantage of the fact that theaters are closed, right? They
Right.
can't go to Avengers movies, so why not do Avengers books? Right? I mean, to
Right.
me, it was like, I mean, that's a giant 8,000-pound gorilla that casts a shadow over us. And we're not going to get too many opportunities where we're going to be in business and theaters aren't.
Right.
So I don't know, guys, because I remember having a bunch of conversation with people saying, maybe we should just wait and wait and wait. And I'm like, wait, when are we're gonna wait till the movies and the theaters come back? Like, what are you talking? Then they're gonna cast that giant shadow back over us. We have this golden opportunity right now where they can't go, so we become potentially the entertainment for some people. Why are we thinking about being shy about it? Right? It was one of the reasons why I did a Kickstarter I did an action figure Kickstarter. At the beginning, I had lots of people saying, Todd, why don't you just wait for a while? And I'm like, because I don't know in 6 months if this is going to get 100 times worse, first off.
Right.
And if
Right.
it does, people are not going to be in a very good mood. So never want to try and put product out there when people are pissed off. Or whether half the jobs in the world will have disappeared. Like, I don't know. So right now, we're still at the beginning of it, and a lot of things are being taken away from people at that point. Restaurants and bars and travel and conventions and rock concerts and all the things we normally do. So I'm like, well, okay, if everybody's going to go on pause, I'm gonna put at least something out there. I need to interact. I felt like I needed to interact with the fandom, right? What are we going to do? Just go radio silent, right? It wasn't a plan. So what you guys are doing here, with your podcast
Right.
stuff, I think all serve a giant value to what we're all going through right now. Just being able to talk to each other and have a good time.
Right, exactly. You touched on the point with the with Spawn universe number one when you had all those characters in there. Um, were you paying attention to what the crowd were kind of taken in by all those characters in there, and you're just like, okay, maybe I will do that character and that character, and maybe I'll have plans for the other ones in the future. Was that something that was in the plan to, like, in the marketing scheme of things, since not all those characters were all in there?
The answer is probably I should have. That makes way more sense. But the true answer is no, because most of those characters hadn't had enough exposure and or pages and or stories for there to be any real concrete data for people to be able to react to, right? And so to me it was more of doing what I've made a living at, which is just looking at the visuals of it first and then going from there. So putting out the new universe book, I mean, that was easy. That was just putting a bunch of people together. Coming out with the King Spawn, well, that was, I don't want to say easy, but was a obvious pick, because it was just an extension of what was already there. And then the big one was, well, if I'm going to do another book and create titles for characters that have never had a title, then where do we start? And at that point, the Gunslinger had been coming in. Every time I had drawn him on a cover or something like that, and we had done sort of toys in the past, people got a reaction to it, and he looks cool, right? Again, like I've made an entire career out of that word, right? You just do cool stuff, you can sell it. And so when I looked at everybody, I just went, hey, if I was 16, which one would I want? And I went, shoot, Gunslinger, he looks like a badass. We're gonna go with him. And then I just started moving there, and luckily, the crowd is sort of reacting the same. They seem to like this guy at sort of the same level as I like him, because I don't think there's anything overly sophisticated. He just looks awesome.
Right. So we actually want to touch on that, on your concept of Gunslinger Spawn. Me and Lewis were talking about this prior to having you on right now. I'm just going to put this up. So the design for Gunslinger Spawn, which quick question before I continue on. When was his first appearance? Because we were arguing about that. Was it Spawn 118 or Spawn 119?
Wow, I should know that, shouldn't I?
It's been many years. We will not.
I've been told it's 119, but and so I guess I'll have to look at 118. But the first visual look at him, right? I don't believe there was any story content that went with it or anything. It was just
it was a cameo, I believe.
Yeah, it was a visual peek at him. Yeah, right, a cameo.
This will be the new argument of 180 or 181.
He just
that's it for Wolverine. That's it. So
no, he just sparked a new argument now. It's like, it's 118, I think.
But for me, like, again, so you've got that image up on screen, right? So let me just sort of talk to you, because I drew that one, and there's going to be a bunch of people drawing different versions of it. That version right there, a couple things I did intentionally in that, and I'm not saying when I hand it to my creative people that they have to use that, but I'm just saying, hey, here's the inspiration. I don't want the hat to be sort of so tall it starts to look like Dr. Seuss, right? So I don't want to do a cat in a hat thing in there. So I brought it down. It's still a big tall hat and whatever else. I intentionally took away the chains I mean, he's got a little bit around the neck, but I intentionally took away the chains, and even in that image right there, he doesn't even have the skull that you normally see with Spawn at the sort of at the stomach area.
Like the belt area.
Yeah, in the belt area, right? I mean, you could put a skull within the belt and whatever else, and other people are doing it. Brett Booth, who's drawn Gunslinger, actually does a skull, so cool, and it looks badass. And I didn't want to give him, quote unquote, a cape, right? So, instead I gave him the long duster jacket, which I always thought looked really awesome in Westerns. And by the way, Keanu Reeves wore it quite well in The Matrix, right? Long jackets can give the illusion of capes done right. As you can see, there's a little melodrama in that drawing there. So one of the things I wanted to do was to not make it that he just felt like instantly, right? I mean, if you took the mark off his chest, I don't even know if most people wouldn't first reaction would go, oh, that's a cousin of a Spawn, right? It would just be some dude walking at you being sort of, a tough guy. And so that's really sort of more of what I want to do with some of the characters that already pre-exist and are going to be moving forward. I want to push them so that they each have their own personalities and their own looks. I mean, eventually the book, in my mind, isn't even called Gunslinger Spawn. I'm at some point I'm going to drop the word Spawn, and he's just going to be Gunslinger, right? That's going to be his name.
Yeah.
So
I was just gonna say, like, you want to put like his own identity in it, kind of thing.
yeah,
Individualism.
yeah, and not only his backstory and his origin and his reason for doing everything, and the reason for that is if somebody says, I've read Spawn or I've looked at it and I don't really like it, I don't want them to then go, oh, this is just sort of a knockoff Spawn, right? I want them to be able to at some point say, oh, I did Gunslinger Spawn. I'm going to collect that for the next 5 years, but the regular Spawn, I don't care about it. Right? And it's okay because there's enough differentiation in those two characters that you can say that you could live with one and you don't really need the other per se.
Would you say that this Spawn is kind of like an introduction to a newer generation of readers, kind of thing? Since you're giving this Spawn his own identity, kind of thing.
The answer is kind of yes. That if you want to get in on the ground floor of a character and get sort of all the history from the beginning, then this is going to be your guy, right? Obviously, Spawn's been around. The Al Simmons Spawn's been around for 30 years, and so there's 320 issues of it now with the King Spawn, and so that's more of you like Spawn or you've passed through it in the last 30 years, and you want more of it. Like multiple issues of or multiple titles of characters like Batman and Superman and Spider-Man. You just go, oh my gosh, he's so popular. I'll read him twice a month. But
Right.
if you want to just say, hey, I don't know anything about this character, but neither does anybody else, then this is literally the ground floor of getting in on sort of the quote unquote new origin of a new character. Yeah.
I was watching one of the interviews that you've done, and with Mike Avila, like Hell I Won't, kind of thing. That's like, I really love that documentary. In there you said that where do you see yourself like years from now, and you said that you see yourself kind of like full circle again. Do you feel like Gunslinger Spawn kind of put you in a full circle kind of thing, because you're starting out almost, since it has its own personality, it's almost as if you're starting brand new again. Is that correct? Or
yeah, I think the comment in that was full circle was that I'll just get rid of all my businesses and just go back to just drawing, right? I mean, and like, because that's how I started as a freelance artist, and then I've done all this stuff, started all these businesses, and life gets sort of busy and complicated. But there's a part of me that just says at some point I'll basically come back to that and just say, no more business, no more complications. I just want to draw on paper or my tablet and just do fun stuff and not be concerned at that point of the other side of the circle of whether it even sells. Because I'll be an old man by that point, and hopefully I'll have squirreled a few pennies away, and just do it for the joy of making comic books, and not worry about all the is it working? Have we met our deadlines? Have it got out? Where is it in the rankings? Can we make a toy of it? I mean, all those other things that were way more important when I was younger and still have a lot of value today. That was it. But in terms of creating new characters and coming up with new ideas, all of that is spinning in my head to the point that I was just talking to another writer saying, "Hey, I might need to give up the writing on Spawn, and maybe down the line even Gunslinger Spawn, just so I can just sit and create more and more new ideas and more things and put them into play."
Right. So I mean, like, with Gunslinger Spawn 2 as well. When you first started Spawn, again, reading and watching all these documentaries about you and whatnot, it stated that Spawn has, Spawn in yourself isn't too different. The personality of Spawn itself, it kind of you put yourself in, if you were Spawn, this is who you are. If you were to lose yourself and you lose your Wanda and whatnot, do you have your own personality in Gunslinger Spawn 2 as well? Did you put yourself
just ratchet it up a little bit of just, I mean, again, I was talking to somebody the other day and I go, "Hey, we got to put this scene in because it's what I would have done." Right. I wouldn't, I mean, we don't need it and it's not overly necessary, but it doesn't seem, if we don't put it in there, then it's, I don't know, it seems a little two-dimensional then, that it's just like, oh, let's just punch each other in the face and the good guy eventually wins and then you go to the next issue, right? I mean, we got to put a little bit of humanity in the characters to remind us that all of these characters, I don't care, mine, Marvel, DC's, anybody, we're all human for the most part. I mean, not all of them, but a big portion of them. We're all human, and then got endowed with powers, right? And sometimes we forget that piece of the puzzle, right? It's one of the pieces that doesn't allow me to really sort of enjoy the big superhero movies, that they're going so much, from my perspective, for the wow factor and for the visual factor and for the visuals, which are all fantastic and amazing. But I don't hear a human being talking, right? I hear a character moving around that's going to do something really glitzy. And so I always thought, if I was in charge of Hollywood, I'd go get the best drama writers and I'd put them and let them write the superhero stuff, because at least they'd give me some, I think, more humanity to what is going on, right? Instead of making a joke in the middle. Let me just tell you right now, and again, it's just me being old. There wouldn't be one time, and I like to smile and have fun and joke around like anybody else, but there wouldn't be one time, and maybe it's just my personality, that once I was going to be a hero or whatever, I put the game face on, and somebody's doing something that might cause harm and or death to somebody else, there's not going to be 1 second in my life where that's fucking funny.
Right.
It's a dead serious job. It's like being a cop in an intense moment. You don't start making cracking jokes in the middle of an intense, and so I just can't go for that piece in all of this, which is, again, it predates superhero movies. They do it in most action, PG-13 action movies, right? Hasta la vista, baby, right? I'll be back, right? I mean, everybody, I can go on and on. I can't, which is why I couldn't, even as a young kid, watch those kinds of movies. I just go, here's what I call them: chaos with no consequence. For me, chaos with no consequence. Lots of cool, spectacular stuff. And if I was 11, they'd be the best movies ever. I'm not 11. So I need some real drama in it. And they just aren't feeding it to me. And so, and it's funny because I'm gonna tell you what's the funniest part. I am so aware of it to the point that I can't enjoy it, which is just why I can't sort of go to those movies. That I ruin it for others because they're like, Todd, why are you such a grump face when you do go, right? I mean, my daughter took me
Right.
to one superhero movie she wanted. She said, Dad, come on, it's super cool. And my daughter's in her 20s. Come on,
Right.
it's super cool. And I guess 5 or 6 times in that movie, I groaned. She
Right.
goes, what's wrong, Dad? And I went, what? And she goes, you made a noise. And I went, what? I don't even know it. I don't even know that I'm going, ugh. Like, it's absurd, right? These
Yeah.
moments where it's like, this is absurd.
Right.
And so but again, let me also tell you, I wasn't a fan of Pirates of the Caribbean because I just thought it was farcical. So it was like, so if you ask me, Todd, well then, Todd, that brings up a question. What are your favorite movies? They are all dramas. They're
Right.
all dramas with
Yeah.
little to no sort of big giant sort of special effects. They're all just real people in real situations. The majority of them based on true stories. And I just go there. Now, what happens if you took that story and you put a boogeyman in it, or you put a superhero in it, or and somebody got hit by lightning and they could lift a car over their head? How would that change that story instead of
Yeah.
everybody being endowed with powers? But anyways, we all have
Yeah.
our taste.
Well, I was gonna say that is there a big influence of Unforgiven with Gunslinger Spawn? Because it seems like it's I
No,
haven't I mean like the issue doesn't come out until later on.
yeah,
Today's the FOC date for it, but
yeah.
I'm getting a feeling kind of like a Clint Eastwood kind of thing because you know the infamous story is that it Clint Eastwood waited until he got older to play the part. It seems like you almost did the same thing. You're like, there's Gunslinger Spawn. I'm gonna wait till years later to do Gunslinger Spawn kind of thing, and
So
the look too as well.
Right. So Unforgiven, no, not really. Am I aware of the movie? Yes. Do I like it? Yes. Do I like Clint Eastwood? Yes. Let's just talk about Clint. When I was a kid, he made all those sort of spaghetti westerns, right?
Hmm.
The sort of the outlaw Josie Wales and for a few dollars more and all those ones. And I have these sort of heroic sort of images in my head where Clint would sort of come out of the saloon. And remember, you'd have that little sort of brown cigarette in his mouth, and he had the poncho, right?
Right.
And he didn't really talk much. I mean, Clint in a lot of his movies doesn't talk much. And so to me, I'm just using that romantic version of those kinds of movies, Hang 'em High, of like that somber, serious, gunslinger who just goes, I got a job to do. Let's go do the job. Right. And so
Hmm.
there's going to be some moments of what people at first read, you yourself may go, Todd, well, you said it was going to be serious. That seems a little bit funny. But if
Hmm.
you reread it with the way that I would film it, that it may read a little humorous, but the gunslinger at no time is saying it with any sense of humor. It's only humorous because he's a man out of time and he doesn't understand the contraption that he's talking about. And that becomes a little bit of the humor because he doesn't know how to make it work. So you
Right.
go, oh, that's funny. He doesn't know how to make it work. But at no time when he's asking about it and he's getting his answers, is there a smile or any levity in it? He's just trying to figure it out. So I want to play up in modern times that he is a man out of time. I mean, eventually he's going to have to adapt, but at the beginning, there's a lot of things that are going to be completely foreign to him, and I'm going to try and point out stuff that seems super obvious to you and I. Not that there are cell phones, not that there
Right.
are electric cars or whatever. None of that. I'm just talking about normal stuff that you and I just take for granted every day. That somebody 200 years ago would go, oh my God, like, oh my God, that we go,
Right.
what? We didn't have that 200 years ago.
Hmm.
And it's not like he's going to walk around and do that. But again, I just want to go. This isn't a guy who just is going to look at the world and so quickly adapt. We're also going to find out that he's not. He has half the power of Al Simmons' Spawn. So I'm also
Right.
introducing this concept that all spawns are not created equal. They
Right.
don't all have the same powers, right? Some are way, way weaker than others. Some I may introduce are way more powerful, but he's on the weekend, which basically means he needs to use weapons. So you're gonna see not only is he good with a pistol, but he's good with a rifle. He's good with arrows. He's good with knives, and he's good with an axe in his hand. Like it doesn't matter. Put anything in his hand, and he'll make it work. And part of it will be, we'll find out because he grew up along sort of the U.S. Mexican border when that was still developing, and he just saw all these different types of people, both from Mexico, the Americans, and the native people that were there. And he was just taking it all in and just going, oh, this is how they use their tools. Oh, this is how they kill. Right.
Right.
So he's learned basically to kill many, many, many different ways. And so that's his protection. He's pretty self-sufficient.
Will this be like the most grounded spawn that you've created, or that you've seen, or that you've written? In terms of
Well,
storytelling wise.
I've only written one, so it's like two. This would be more grounded because he's gonna have to figure out how to win slightly different than Al Simmons spawn or others that can just sort of sometimes use their bolt of green energy shooting out of their hands, right? He's not going to have that luxury, right? I mean, there's even a short story that I'm going to see the final colors today that sort of even say that, and it's not even that he can just go and grab, depending on who his opponent is. You can't even just grab regular bullets. Regular bullets don't work either. Just like the old fable of, you want to kill a werewolf, you got to get silver bullets. He needs to modify his bullets for certain people, but it comes at a cost, and so he needs to be a little prudent as to how he does that, because it sort of is a detriment to him at the same time. So.
Right. The before we got on online too as well, Lewis and I were talking, and there's a common customer that we share, and he called us early in the morning. He goes, "Do you have any more Gunslinger spawn? Do you have any more Gunslinger spawn?" How do you feel about this new rise in indie comics that's happening in the last few years? I'm not quite sure if you've seen it in terms of number wise, analytic wise, but there's been a great interest of indie comics, and it seems like Spawn is like the forefront of it, since when the first time that indie comics really had this kind of rise was back in the 90s. How do you feel about like all these demands all of a sudden for Spawn, Image Comics, and whatnot, and like all these things happening?
I would say
adapted?
creator own. I mean, again, I get to see all the numbers and stuff, so the answer is yes. There's an uplift, right? Image last year had their best year in 13, 14 years, and we're going to top it. We're going to top it again this year. I think there's even a chance that we may have our best year ever this year, depending on how we wind up in December. So that just puts it in perspective. And you're seeing it with other companies too, outside of Image. So it's not just all Image, although we're doing a lot of it. But you're seeing, books that have been coming down the pipeline the last year or so with Department of Truth, Noctera, Crossover, Undiscovered Country, some of the new Spawn stuff, and
they're all getting picked up, the IPs.
Yeah, and just in terms of raw numbers. So let's just sort of stay with comic books, where if you got initial orders of 50,000 copies a couple years ago, that was huge for an independent comic book. And now those numbers are, at least with issue number ones, are on a steady basis with some of those titles, are now easily doubling that, right? And in some cases, with some of the stuff that some of the other creators are doing and I'm doing, those numbers are 3, 4, 5 times that number. And so these numbers that even just a couple years ago were almost unimaginable. Not only for us as creator owned books, but even from the big two, because there was a spell there for a long time where if any book sort of sold over 100,000, that was a home run. I didn't care what company it came from. And now you're getting independent books that are doing it on a steady basis. It's huge. So if that's because we've got more people now that have joined the party because they're locked at home and they've joined comic book, or if it's because as you get older, maybe you don't need, which is what happened to me. I didn't need a complete 100% steady diet of superhero comic books per se. I diversified my reading, and some of those books I mentioned earlier sort of fit that bill. So I don't see it. I don't see it going away. And the thing that's really uplifting is that it's not just issue number ones. And because you can argue that issue number ones are like movies, that it's easy to sort of launch a movie. The question is anybody going back to it the next week. So even issue number two really isn't the tell. There's a tendency for retailers to overcorrect the other direction. It's more when you're looking at issue like 4 and 5 and 6. Where is that number? And what we're seeing right now with them is that you're getting these big starts. You're getting a crash at number 2, and then the retailer is saying, "Oh my gosh, we overcorrected," and then they're coming back up, and then all of a sudden now issues 5, 6, 7, 8 of some of these books are, in a weird way, closer to the orders of 1 than they are of the orders of 2. And those are huge victories, because now you're saying, what? There's a chance that we can now set a hard floor of the expectation of sales at a number that a few years ago was like we would have taken for an issue number 1, and now we can get it for an issue number 7. Cool, right? Good for the creative community.
Right. And with that being said too as well, is there going to be a big surprise in Gunslinger Spawn? If you can give us a little hint in the coming issues, in the coming story, I guess. You don't have to give the whole thing.
I don't know that the word is surprise has it's more of sort of new information, right? Because here's a character that you haven't sort of seen and read a lot about. So, I'm going to add, here's the reason of this. Here's the reason for this. Here's why this is, and you're going to go, oh, hadn't thought about that. Oh, didn't know that. Oh, didn't see that coming. Oh, okay. And then it's like, oh, okay, all that starts to make sense. I even got a quick scene. It's almost a throwaway in issue number 1 that, for all intents and purposes, basically says why his hat's tall, right? Besides, it's cool. It's a throwaway. He doesn't make a big deal about it. But then once you see sort of these couple panels, you're going to go, oh, I guess that makes sense. Or you're going to go, that's silly, Todd. But
I personally appreciate the explanation for the hat.
Yeah. So, Lewis, ask your question.
Right, again, Lewis, I'm not gonna give a long dissertation about it, but you're gonna go, okay, overly simple answer, but it makes a bit of sense for a guy who's 200 years in the past. Okay.
If it came off of me being sarcastic,
yeah,
my Tim will tell you, no, I do actually appreciate those small little details. Thank you. I was thinking about it the whole time.
The funny thing is, you're actually ahead of our question, because one of our questions is actually, we were debating about the hat. What was the question, Lewis? What were we talking about the hat? It was a mix between.
It was like a mix of what if an Amish person went into a walkabout and became a gunslinger, or Abraham Lincoln Western.
Abraham, yeah, no, you're right. He had to me. Here's what his hat was to me. And again, I'm going to age myself. Years ago, there was, and I would say that probably drew some of his personality, that this character's personality, into Gunslinger. There was a movie when I was a kid called Billy Jack, and Billy Jack was this dude. He was just a dude. Now, and it wasn't a Western story per se, but it was. this guy who they called a half breed and whatever else, but he had this cool hat. He had this cool hat. I always thought it was, and I just remember it because it wasn't like a traditional cowboy hat that curved. It was flat brimmed, right? First time I ever sort of paid attention to it. And then later on, Clint Eastwood, his Outlaw Joe Whale, he always had flat brims. And but Billy Jack's was rounded. And it was this cool black hat. And so it's essentially, if you take a Billy Jack hat and stretched it, and to my mind, that's sort of what the hat is.
Yeah, it does. I remember that movie. Tom Langley, I think it was 1971.
Yeah, no, so it's going way back. It's going way back.
Yeah. No, I had HBO Max. It was there because I think it just popped up. I'm just like, hey, it just in my
Well,
head.
we live in a world where people can now either Google right now or go to YouTube, and I'm sure there's a commercial for it, right? The original trailer is probably out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Fully access to all information ever.
Has your plans for, and again, you don't have to go too much details on this, with the pandemic and the streaming services all just on the rise, have your plans for the Spawn movie have changed to just release in the movie theater or in the streaming service in like chapters, kind of like what Zack Snyder's Justice League did, kind of thing?
We're not even close to being able to have those conversations. We have to get the first movie at a studio and set that up, and then ask the questions: what are we setting up? Are we setting up 5, sort of movie franchise of Spawn? Are we setting up the beginning of something that could expand into more than just Spawn? I mean, those are big questions that I'm having sort of behind closed doors, but it all is going to hinge upon getting that the original Spawn movie out and using that as literally the sort of the spear's point to basically drive everything else behind it if we decide to go down that direction, and if anybody has any interest. So it's a big concept, right? Shared universe is a big concept on any level. Is there interest and demand for people to want to have those kinds of franchises? Yes, right. Marvel, which is owned by Disney, and DC owned by Warner Brothers, they already have theirs. But then there's everybody else in between that would love to have a Marvel,
Right.
Marvel Light, they'll take it. Which is why you start seeing stuff like The Boys and Jupiter's Legacy and some of these other things, Watchmen, and so, where you're starting to see people trying, can we get that success a second, third time? And they're going to continue to try until somebody figures it out in a meaningful way.
Right. Now, with one of my final questions is with the Spawn universe and Gunslinger Spawn being number 1 coming out next month, is there a bigger picture that we should be expecting somewhere down the road when it comes to Spawn's universe kind of thing? Is there like a big collaboration that's going to be happening with a bunch of artists? Is there going to be a bigger storyline that we're looking into right now, or am I trying to hit on something that you're already planning?
No, here's what I would say. All of what you just asked, I've thought about, but I don't want to get sort of ahead of myself. And maybe people will say, Todd, you're slow playing it, right? Remember, it took almost 30 years for me to come out with this second comic book. So I'm a very sort of short, patient person, and I think that each sort of success allows you to then go to the next sort of step in the natural progression. So let's talk about it for a moment. Spawn's Universe comes out. Spawn's Universe is now going to literally be the determining factor of whether those other 3 titles, because I announced all 4 of them at the same time, right? Of whether the one is going to be the catalyst. And if this book comes out and fails miserably, right, it becomes very difficult to go to step 2 because what's your advertisement? Hey, from that book that nobody read that you thought was crap is an extension of that crap, right? It's not a very good marketing campaign.
Right.
And so this is what I tell people about business. They're like, Todd, you sold your soul and whatever else. It's like, first off, you don't know what I do for a living. So it's awesome that you know what motivates me, given that you've never met me, but that's super awesome. Here's why you need success, because then you can get into rooms and keep it going. You don't walk into a room, introduce yourself, and say the last 4 things you did failed miserably and expect them to buy whatever it is that you've got. You have to have success. This is the piece I don't get from people. So you're saying you would rather than have something that fails and then expect people to buy your future ideas from the guy who failed? No. They go to the people who've had success and they ask them, do you have any more stuff? This is just how it works. I hate to make it that simple, but it's how it works. So I need the success. I need to have some planning of success so that I can then get to the next idea and the next one after that, and the next one after that. So there has to be some level of going, here's why you should be dealing with me at any level, Hollywood, toys, TV people, t-shirt people, anybody, if I want that, or video, like it doesn't matter. And so that component has to be there. So if we apply all of that to myself and to comic books, Spawn Universe has to get out of the gate, right? Okay, boom, it did, right? It was the biggest launch at Image in the 21st century. Oh, why is that important? It's important because now you're coming back with something that's a follow-up to it, what you call King Spawn, step 2. And King Spawn, they're going to then say, hey, this is an extension of Spawn's universe. How did Spawn Universe do? Did pretty well. You know what? Okay, my risk factor now goes down because you have data, right? You have knowledge, you have hindsight on your side. So now you go, oh, I can order some King Spawns and I'll feel fairly comfortable. And then King Spawn comes out, and if your King Spawn book sold and we got orders, getting orders is one thing, selling is the second piece. This is way more important, not just getting orders, right? I get orders from Walmart. That's only half the equation. I can put the toys on the shelf. The way bigger problem is I got to get those toys off the shelf, because then Walmart will continue to give me orders. If I don't, they don't give me any orders. So getting the order, although very, 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 very difficult, is only half of the equation. So
you got to keep it going.
You've got to sell what's on shelf. So now we get King Spawn. King Spawn comes out, and the retailers are going to decide, hey, Spawn's Universe did pretty well for us, or not. I'll let every store determine for themselves. And then King Spawn comes out, did pretty well. What's the next book? Oh, this thing called Gunslinger. Okay, well, the last 2 did okay. And oh, by the way, I'm seeing an uptick in the regular Spawn book going up anyways. You know what? I'm starting to feel a little bit comfortable where my risk factor is here, right? Bam. And then if Gunslinger comes out, has a new character, because it was intentional that King Spawn came out first of the 3 new monthlies, because it was a known quantity. I wanted to make sure their first monthly that they bought in 30 years was a known quantity, which was Spawn. And now I'm asking them to sort of stretch a little bit more. Will you buy some Spawn mythology that isn't the OG, right? It's another character. We're going to find out, right? If FOCs are today, we'll find out. I think it's going to work. It'll go. And then if that works, then all of a sudden, a couple months from now, when the Scorch comes out, which is a team book, then they'll go, hey, Spawn doing okay, the universe doing okay, King Spawn did okay, Gunslinger did okay. We can feel comfortable now with the books. I'm not saying they're all going to be home runs, they're all going to be fantastic. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm just saying that you put a retailer in a position to say, I could do worse than ordering Todd's #1 Scorch title or #1 Gunslinger title compared to these other 300 books that I have an option to buy today, right? I think I'll do better off with some of his books compared to some of the other books. Cool. And then it's on me once I launch all those 4 with some reasoning and rationale as to why I put it in that order. to keep those books going to a level in which people think that they're getting, a quality book, or at least an entertaining book, at the price that we're selling it for. Plus, again, it's not an accident. All those books are $5.99 and they're double, triple size, because I want to choke people with value. So it's an easy buy-in, given that some 20-page books are now $4.99. For an extra buck, you can buy these sort of fat, double-sized issues from Todd.
Right.
And then when you get to the regular books, they're all going to be $2.99. Right? It's like nobody's doing $2.99 books. Okay, all things
Right.
being equal, I think a dollar matters. $2 for sure, but a dollar matters from $3.99 to $2.99. All things being equal, right? Here it is. You want a Hershey bar for $2.99 that's that big, or do you want a Hershey bar that's that big for $3.99? I don't know. At some
Right.
point, all things being equal, give me the cheaper one. So a buck's a buck.
Right.
And I used to be a starving young kid trying to buy comic books when I was a kid. So
Right.
I've had people go, "Why don't you go up to $3.99? Why? Why?
Right.
I make a good living. I've got money. My kids are through college. I got a car.
Right.
Like, we're good. I don't need it. What I need is fans and customers that feel good about the product, and part
Yeah.
of that is price. And so here we go. We're going to introduce some new stuff, and we'll see where it all goes.
Right.
Now, after I do all that, can I start thinking about your big question about big events and all this other stuff? Of course I can, because I've laid a foundation. And once you lay a foundation, you can build skyscrapers on strong foundations.
Yeah. Is this it feels like Spawn, Scorch, and King Spawn and Spawn's universe, it feels like it's as if it's kind of like a love letter to fans itself. How important are fans to you? I know it's been said many times and it's been expressed, but it seems like, for the most part, you do what you do just for the fans itself. It's like you put yourself kind of like, hey, if I was a big fan, what do I want to see, kind of thing, on the comic book kind of thing. Is that really something very important, or more of like numbers
I
that
think
you're looking
I think we lose when we become adults, and I see it in business meetings. I do a lot of them. I think we lose our inner child too much as adults. And
for?
when people are trying to figure out like what works and what doesn't work, I think that they just forget some of the simple stuff. You were 8 years old once. What do you think would look cool as a toy? Right? That answer is completely valid. You're trying to overthink the factor of just as a toy. I'm in the toy business here. That something looks cool. Okay, why Gunslinger going to get out of the gate? Because he just looks bad. I mean, guys, stop, full stop. There's
Right.
we'll by issue 12 and 15, we can come back and we can analyze the character and get into all the psychology of him and all that other stuff. Right now, he just looks cool. He looks awesome. When I was 16, would I have wanted to buy a Gunslinger book? Of course I would have. Of course I would. So when people come, and even some of my artists do covers for me, and they go, "Well, what do you want on the cover?" I tell them the exact same thing. I want you to put on the cover what you as a 15-year-old would have bought. That's what I want you to put on the cover.
Right.
And they're like, "Well, what is that?" Like, that's it, dude. I gave you all the instructions you need. You decide what it was when you were 15 that you would have gone, "Oh my gosh, I wish I'd make a poster out of that." It should be the cover that they go, "I wish they would make a poster out of that." That's the image. That's the image I want you to do. So go, and I'll let you make up whatever that is in your brain, because I don't know what it was and what you liked when you were a kid. But that mentality should still be there as we do it. And all those things that I used to like as a kid, I just apply them into my books. And guess what? Oh, I'm selling books. Why? Because I don't think the human population has evolved that much, that human beings that are now 15, 16, 26 are any different than I was when I was 15, 16, 26, right?
Right.
We react to the same stuff. I get that there's technology, and I get there's sophistication. I get there's other ways to deliver the fix, but the emotional reaction to stuff is still the exact same. So how do you make that emotional touch? I don't know. Put cool stuff at a quality and price it fairly. It's a winning combo.
Exactly. One final one is we want to geek out a little bit here. Convention wise, sir. I know Lewis is like wondering about New York Comic Con. Was that Lewis?
Specifically for your marketing of the book, will you be personally going to New York Comic Con, especially since I would understand if you weren't because of the pandemic, and
Yeah,
that's
no.
just large crowds.
Yeah, no, I'm not there yet.
Mhm.
I'm not there yet. So
Because I saw you in Fan Expo in Canada in Toronto. I actually passed by you and I kind of stopped on my trail and I looked around. I'm like, why isn't anybody crowding this man? He's walking by himself with someone. It was like a lady and whatnot. I kind of just stopped on my trails. I wanted to say hi and whatnot, and I just kind of just froze. I'm like, oh, I'll just see him in the lineup later. Is it do you miss conventions and getting
Oh,
interacting with your fans and whatnot?
oh, it's the it's yeah, it's probably from the comic book and the thing that I've missed the most in these 18 years, the interaction with the fans, right? So, but comma, you know, we also live in a world not nearly as sort of fun as being there and being able to give an autograph to somebody in person and having a short sort of
Mhm.
discussion with them. But you saw things like, you know, DC Warner Brothers had their DC fandom last year, just as a
Right.
byproduct of
Mhm.
the pandemic, and I believe they got something like 22 million people came and looked at it. Right? I mean,
Right.
on look at it. San Diego Comic Con is getting 100,000, and maybe a third of them, if you're lucky, come by your booth. So okay, there's 30,000 and there's 22 million, right?
Mhm.
The thing about it about conventions, and although they're nice and it's great to meet people in person, it still is only about whoever happens to be in that city, in that building at that time, and it doesn't give any value that you're doing that convention to somebody who lives in North Dakota or who lives in Saskatchewan, or who lives in Spain, or who lives in South Korea. Like, so how do you reach those people? Well, the world we live in now is the way we're doing it right now. You do it digitally, and it's not maybe quite as satisfying, but you can reach way, way more people doing it that way. And at least they get to have a little bit of interaction with you or a little bit of news about you than just saying, hey, every weekend I'm going to go to a convention and it's only about the couple thousand people that are in front of me during that weekend. Because I can do a tweet and hit 500,000 people, right?
Right.
And if it's about interacting with people, there, you know, the easiest, fastest way to interact now is with that thing that's in the palm of my hand during the day. So
Right.
the conventions have news outlets, and those are valuable and whatever else. But no, I like I said, I'm not. I thought about it, and then I just went, you know, my daughter's a doctor, and she's got
Right.
COVID from being a frontliner and stuff like that, and she's seen it with her own eyes and stuff. And we just, and I have my other daughter's got, you know, sort of health issues, anyways,
Right.
pre pandemic, that
Yeah.
her autoimmune system is compromised. So
Yeah.
we're pretty sort of careful, and would probably be maybe one of the families that might be overly careful in the long run. But you know,
Yeah.
just
Oh no,
just
I definitely understand on my side too. My wife is a pediatric cardiologist too as well, so she sees a lot of those kids too as well. So,
yeah.
um, so Louis, why aren't you a doctor? I mean, Mr. McFarlane's daughter is a doctor, and Rachel's a doctor. Why aren't you a doctor? What are
What?
you doing?
Why are you parenting me right now? You know for a fact that I almost actually committed to that.
Being a doctor. Well, again, sir,
It
thank
was
you.
too much for me to do.
Thank you for being in our show. I mean, like this has been a great insight on it. I'm really looking forward to Gunslinger Spawn, and there especially I'm a big fan of like Unforgiven and Tombstone kind of movie wise, and
Yeah.
seeing Gunslinger Spawn. I mean, like on the for the first time,
Yeah,
either
if
118 or
if I could
119.
add one, if I could add one piece to it too,
Sure, sure, go
the
ahead.
one thing that I think is going to be hopefully fun and entertaining, interesting about Gunslinger is because he's a guy that had a life prior to being pulled into modern times, it's not just going to be about a guy at a time. I'm going to be able to tell stories or flashbacks or even miniseries one shots where I go back. We're gonna some of the storytelling is going to go back and forth, which means, and you're going to see it in the issue number one, where there's going to be Western stories in there and modern stories. But it's going to allow me to, just have and tell different kinds of stories and not hopefully get repetitive, because he can, say, "Oh my God, I remember this," and then go back and be in the middle of the Civil War or something like that. That would be a completely different story than if he's, getting attacked by, whoever the bad guy is in the year 2021. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I am, again, for everybody watching, Gunslinger Spawn comes out on October 20th. So definitely mark your calendars there. If you haven't pre-ordered it yet, pre-order now. Lewis himself, he's a retailer, so make his life a living hell and just pre-order as much as you can after the FOC. So Lewis will just have to order as much as he
Sneak
can.
preview. I have ordered more than 500 of them.
There you go. So
It's not even a joke.
More than 500 already.
Busy morning.
I did my pre-orders already for my customers, and I have like almost 150 pre-orders on Gunslinger Spawn, and I still getting phone calls saying, "Hey, do you still have time?" I was like, "Listen, today's the last day, so you might as well just let me know now, because it's gonna go pretty quickly, or you can just you can just try your best later on when it comes out in the Hunger Games and hunt it down if you want." But any last words, Lewis, for you before we end this?
No, I'm gonna keep it in a very traditional fashion. I have nothing.
I have nothing. Mr. McFarlane, any last words for everybody watching and listening as well?
No, just keep doing what you guys are doing. Like I said, I think that all of us in our industry need to figure out ways to still interact and touch each other some way. If we're not going to be at conventions, there's still a way to get all this information out, and it's obviously, bizarre as it is, it's working. That you're seeing an increase in sales in comic books at a time when there was no comic book conventions, right? So you would think it would be a detriment. It ended up being a boon, right? So you have this weird thing going, man, our best year ever. We went to no conventions.
Right.
So maybe there's other ways to reach people. So.
Right. On the personal level, sir, I've been a big fan for years, and having to talk to you, reading your books, and not even getting close to you when I was a teen, and then interviewing you is a dream come true. Thank you again for being here, sir, and dedicating a few minutes of your time. I know you're very busy.
Yeah. No, I've got to rush to the office now and literally finish Gunslinger because it goes to the printers in 2 days.
Hey.
Oh, fantastic! So it's our fault, Lewis, if Gunslinger
if I'm an hour behind, then
you can just blame me. I'm used to it. I'll take all the complaints. I'll ignore them, throw them in a fire, and then make a tweet about it.
That's it.
Right. There you go. So it's our fault. Thank you again, sir.
Take care.
Have a good day, guys. We'll see you next time.
Be good.